Hello. We're now looking at opening up the thoracic cavity, which has the lungs and many blood vessels attached to that thing called the heart. It has a number of immune system functions there as well, but we have to get to it first. This is the nose, this is the tongue, here's the chinny chin chin, and what we're going to do is make a line straight down through the center as close as possible, because this sternum is a little bit pointed, so you can kind of feel with your finger where that point is, and you want to go through that. So I'm going to make a scalpel cut, and you usually have to make a couple of cuts to go right down the middle. Your scalpel might start catching on the bone. You can just trace that a little bit, but I usually like to open this up a little bit. And what I'm going to do is make a kind of arrow here so I can peel back some of the skin. You don't have to do all of this, but I'll be able to open that up, and we'll be able to see some of the salivary glands as well as the key features of the throat. Okay. What I usually do as well is cut some of this tissue anterior or ahead of the forelegs here, in order to give me a little bit more play with the tissues. But you don't want to cut too deep, because you're going to cut into, and I just did that, the throat. Whoopsie. Okay, so you see the sternum here, and you're going to follow that line that you cut, and usually with the scalpel, a good scalpel, you can trace this until it opens up. You see how it's parting a little bit there. Now, you want to do this very carefully so you don't cut too deeply, but you're cutting through some of the pleural membranes here with the pericardium as well as the membrane around the lungs. So I've opened this up. I can see the throat, and I'm going to trace back from that. And this will give us a starting point for our cutting for our how deep we need to cut. So I'm doing a little bit of paring away of the skin here. And I'm being careful for how far I cut, and being aware of where my fingers are, because there's a number of salivary glands here as well. I'm going to do that on the other side. Salivary glands, we're ignoring the muscle right now, even though there's a vast array here, because we're cutting basically into the part of the jaw, or close to it. And pulling that back. Okay. So we can see some of the throat here, or in this case, the larynx. And I've cut a little bit too deep, so I've cut into it and given it a little bit of a tracheometry, a trach job. Okay, what I am going to do is try to cut a little bit further down here and tease away some of this tissue. Now, one thing I should point out, we have, if you use your blunt probe and just tease some of the tissues around the edge here, you can see this little lump. Here's the larynx. The pharynx is up here, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But we also have this little bean of something that's sitting on top of the trachea, so we can't see the trachea. And that is the thyroid. Now with the thyroid for us, there's kind of a lump here and a lump here and a thin connection in between. But this is the thyroid on the pig. This is a major hormone and a regulatory center, especially for metabolism. So you can have hyper and hypothyroidism, either over excited, abnormal metabolism, or a depressed one where you have less energy and such. Okay, so you can see that right here. So we have the larynx, which is kind of the voice box. And then if we tease this little bean of the thyroid to the side, we can start seeing the... I'm just tearing it to the side. We can start seeing the trachea. If you roll your blunt probe against it, you can feel it's kind of ridged, and you can actually see some of the ridges as you take away some of the soft tissue. I'm not going to talk for a little bit. I'm just going to start cutting back on the skin and then the bone, and I'm actually going to remove some of the rib cage here so it's easier viewed. Might have a montage. Taking out the thyroid altogether, correction, I will be, just to see some more of the trachea. There we go. Now, I'm going to use the blunt probe, or the blunt scissors, I should say, for this next part, because I don't want to cut too deeply and lacerate the blood vessels. This rib cage, if you feel where your rib cage opens up to that little divot in your throat, excuse me, the hollow of the throat, that's what we're looking for, because there's a lot of blood vessels that go in there. So what I'm going to do is run this blunt probe pointed posterior or caudally down the front of it until it sinks in, and it hit that opening. Now it's hooked in there, and I shouldn't be able to get it out if I had a third set of hands. There we go. And what I'm going to do is cut down to that, and I'm trying not to lacerate anything in there, so I'm using the blunt probe in there. And I'm cutting down just to that level. And then my probe should come free then, if I got down to the correct level. It's just about there. I'm going to cut out this little protuberance because we don't need it. There we go. Okay, and my probe pops free. And so I've gotten down to the heart. I've sliced the pericardium a little bit, but what I can do is just trace with the blunt probe and separate it out so the ribs can pull free a little bit more. Now, the pleural membrane, the one that keeps the negative pressure around the lungs, is very thin, and it's attached to those pretty heavily. So you're usually going to destroy it, but it is an important part of breathing. So please appreciate it. Okay. Now I'm trying to spread this out. What I'm going to do is take off some of this rib cage. And this opens up quite a bit here. So far, what we can see is here's where the diaphragm is. Here's where the diaphragm is. And here's the peritoneal cavity that we went over last time. But here's the heart, and it's very central in this animal. And we have this membrane around it, which is the pericardium. With humans, this can become inflamed during infections or some vaccinations, but in general, when it's infected due to a bacterial or viral infection, that's when it can become dangerous. With the vaccinations, at least with the major accepted FDA accepted ones, it is a temporary thing and does not cause permanent damage. Okay, so we have the lungs here, and I would like you to look at these before we start moving things around and destroying them. It has multiple lobes to it. There are lobes of the lung. So you can get a lobe of the lung that is damaged due to asthma or emphysema, or even a infection and get a pneumonia. And the rest of it does the best they can, but you usually are very exhausted, if not in emergency hospital situation. Now, this is a little bit discolored because of the latex in here. The extra latex will cause this to brown a little bit. But on top of here is this different feeling piece of tissue, and it's somewhat fused with the membrane. So if I move this up, you can see that there's this part here. This is the thymus, not the thyroid, which I pulled out, but the thymus. And this is where your T cells for your immune system come from, in general. It sits in a kind of a large mass, and this one's a little bit smaller than most, over your heart. And then over time it shrinks until about 50, where it's very small. So, which is why you want to be able to get your vaccinations before 50, so you can protect as much as the rest of your life that you have. I'm going to pull that off, very crudely pull it off, but it's not very tightly attached because it's not supposed to be there for mechanical purposes. It just sits attached to the pericardium here. And I'm going to take away, and over time, you're going to cut away lots of this pericardium to expose the heart. It's a crude dissection, but we have other things to do. Okay. So we have the heart here. I sliced it a little bit. Whoopsie. So we can see at least 1 and 2 of the atria here. They're kind of fleshy bags sitting on top, but they're actually part of the heart. And sometimes you'll have excess latex in there because it just, if it's not sitting in a part of the blood vessels, it just kind of clumps around. So you might have to wash that out or use a water bottle squirter. I'm going to cut out a little bit more of this um, this rib cage, and then get back to you with a better cleaned out version. Okay, so I'm hopefully going to be able to speed that up so you have a little dissection montage, but I've cleaned away a lot of soft tissue and connective tissue. I like to use the probe as well as the tweezers for the vast majority of this because it's easy to cut too deeply. So the key is patience with this. Now, the one bad thing about doing a dissection where you only have one test in it is that you can't test all of the stuff all the time. So I want you to appreciate at least that we have a set of blood vessels coming out of the heart. And some of these are going down, you can't see, but a bunch of them are going up. And I've clipped a number of these, but this should make you appreciate how important it is to have a surgeon with good hands and absolute confidence and knowledge of the body. Now, I obviously don't expect this pig to survive anything I'm doing to it, so I'm being a little bit more rough. But we have the larynx here, we have the trachea, and hopefully you can see some of those ridges in there. And it's kind of stacked like a whole bunch of solo cups, but with the holes in the middle. So it's flexible because of that. They have just overlapping rings of cartilage there, and that's to keep it from collapsing. So if we use that as a reference point and the heart as the other reference point, we can have the superior vena cava here. And that takes blood from both sides, both front quarters and the head. So here's the jugular. But you can see it comes together. Now, the blue here is supposed to represent deoxygenated blood. It isn't actually blood, it's a latex, but I bring it in here for a main purpose. Now, this whole set of blood vessels come into the top of the heart, specifically and feeds into a chamber that has fused with the inferior vena cava, which we'll show later on when we're doing the lower of blood vessels, or the posterior blood vessels. But they come together right here and then feed into this right atrium here. So this can expand quite a bit, fill with blood, and squeeze it and put it into the right ventricle. We'll talk about that with the beef heart later on. So you have these blood vessels. Now, what I'm going to do, and what I suggest you guys to do, is to tease the tissues underneath a bit with the blunt probe and separate them out. So you see these two tubes coming together here. Those are the carotid arteries, the left and right carotid arteries, and they go up to the brain carrying oxygen-rich blood, but they come together. So the easiest way to do this is find the larynx, find the trachea, and look and I'll move my probe parallel with the trachea to tease away some of these membranes. And it should also be closely attached to these veins here as well, so usually in the same connective sheath. And that will give you the correct depth, so don't cut deeper than the trachea, as well as where to look left and right. So you're going to tease the tissues connecting the two away underneath. And this shouldn't rip anything, but you're also getting it there so you can cut these blue vessels here, the veins leading into the superior vena cava. Okay, so you note I put my probe underneath it, lifted it apart from everything else to make sure I wasn't going to cut anything. I'll do that on the other side. So we'll cut both branches. And then I have the superior vena cava directly attached in, free. And then I'm going to peel this back a little bit. I'm not going to get rid of them entirely, but it's good to get them away from everything. You can see how difficult it is too, and that's probably a good thing that it's difficult for these blood vessels not to be moved. Okay, so we have a different view now. We have a view where we can see other tubes, which are grayish, and if you peel away enough of the exterior of these blood vessels, you can see that they're pink inside. Once we get to the thinner ones of the arteries and arterioles, you can start seeing that there's pink latex inside, but a lot of the time you can't see it as well at the beginning, which can be frustrating and confusing to people. So just take your time cutting. And what we have here, first of all, is the left and right carotid arteries. They go up to the brain, and the face and the head, I guess, is the best way to put it. But if you trace these down, they come to a Y intersection. And this intersection then gets into this main trunk, with one notable exception. Okay, so this set here is the carotid trunk, where the two branches come together. That's a carotid trunk, and it's very particular on where it is, because then there is another artery that branches out from this. If we're saying branching out, whoopsie, that flew a bit far, and that was a nerve, but we're not caring about that right now. Blood vessels. Okay, so I have to tease out the superior vena cava a little bit and get that a little bit farther away. And you're going to run into some connective tissue still from the pericardium that's getting in the way. You can just get that out as you run into it. Okay, so this is where the sternum was. So this is the hole that everything goes in. The blood vessels are going in there. And we have the trunk taking place here. This is the carotid trunk. And then this branch right here is the right subclavian artery. There is not a left mirrored here. The left is farther off, but it's not a mirrored trunk here, which makes it different than other animals. Certain animals have a mirrored trunk. The pigs do not. So it branches off of the main trunk here, which is the brachiocephalic trunk right here. That's the main trunk that feeds into the aorta. And there's more pericardium here. And this is the place where you have to just be careful and be patient. Clearing out this membrane without clearing out the blood vessels is kind of important. Okay, now we're making some progress here. Okay, so what you can see here is the brachiocephalic trunk here. We have the right subclavian, the carotid trunk, and the left and right carotid arteries. Okay, here's the trachea, the larynx, and then the pharynx and the esophagus is right behind it. So, a couple more things with this set of blood vessels is that if you can follow this, the brachiocephalic trunk is attached to something that looks like it's part of the heart, but it's actually a blood vessel, a major one. And if you use your blunt probe, you can start teasing it apart here. Okay. So we have a couple blood vessels you can now see. Let me see if I can get a closer view. I'm not sure if I can at this point. But what we have here is this tube coming out the top of the heart. And since this is the ventral view, this is the pulmonary artery that's taking deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle all the way to the lungs. And what is difficult to see is it splits off left and right to go to each lung from here. But it's difficult to see in this picture. But you can see there is a tube right above it, right here. Oops, I have a leg in the way, sorry. I need a minion, that's what I need. Another set of fingers. There we go. And this tube right here is where the brachiocephalic trunk fits in. So you see this tube curving over that way. That's the aortic arch. And the aorta comes out of the left ventricle and pumps blood out, fully oxygenated blood out. And the first thing it goes to is the head and the right side of the body, upper right side of the body. And the second is the left. So in pigs, they only have two branches off the aorta, which are the brachiocephalic trunk, and then this other one, the second one, is the left subclavian artery. So it's just a little bit farther down this aortic arch. So please remember there's only two branches in the pig. And then it goes descending down. Now there's one other thing. These two arteries seem to be really close together, and they are. So and this is something unique to fetal pigs or fetal animals, is that the pulmonary artery takes deoxygenated blood and splits it to the pulmonary left and right pulmonary arteries. But they connect with this little duct with that in the aortic arch. And that's the ductus arteriosus. So we have the aortic arch, the ductus arteriosus, where they connect together, and the pulmonary artery. So in fetal pigs, the blood coming to the heart is oxygenated by the placenta. They don't use their lungs in the womb. So in order to keep it from going to the lungs and wasting some of its oxygen, Some of it will go to the lungs, yes, but most of it will take this little duct, which is a full-blown artery at that point, and put it into the aortic arch to send it everywhere it needs to go. Once the child is born, or the, in this case, pig, that duct shuts down in less than 10 minutes after birth and becomes a ligament. Ductus arteriosus is a duct between arteries. And so it's very important that it shuts down properly. So then all the blood in the heart is going through the lungs then. So that shunt between the pulmonary artery and the aortic arch goes away. So a fun little thing. The aortic arch goes down and turns into the descending aorta rather quickly, and goes into the peritoneal cavity through the peritoneal membrane. So we have the carotid trunk, the right subclavian, the brachiocephalic trunk, the aortic arch, and then this left subclavian artery. We have the pulmonary artery in between these two parts of the right and left atria. Sometimes they call them auricles, depending on if it's animals or not. One other thing we need to do is take a look at the jaw, or at least what's in there. And there's a number of these spongy masses that feed into the jaw, and those are salivary glands. And you can find some of them here and here, and even here. But what we're going to do is take a look at the end of the larynx here, which is the pharynx. So I'm going to cut away some of this tissue. It's all important tissue, but for right now, not so much. So I'm going to cut in kind of a horseshoe shape around this. So hopefully we can see certain features. Now, don't cut the tube right behind the trachea, because that is the esophagus. It follows the trachea down, gives it some hold, and that's a switchover between food and air. As in, one goes down one, and the food goes down the other. Air goes down one, and food goes down the other. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so the top of the trachea is the larynx, and then the top of that is the pharynx, and that's kind of an ill-defined area, except that it has two tubes going into it. It's the back of the throat. The bottom tube is less defined, but it goes all the way down on the dorsal side of the trachea, and you can see it's thin, it has smooth muscle, and this is where the food goes. So you have rhythmic contracting down it, called the peristalsis. Okay, and that will force the food down into the stomach. Now, in order to make sure that the food goes down the correct hole, we have something of a flap down here, or on top. Okay, the hole that goes into the trachea and the larynx is called the glottis, and that's the hole. But this little kind of L or U-shaped flap will push down, and it's actually a kind of a trash lid that when food comes down here and you swallow, it gets pushed down and directs the food and water into the esophagus. This is the epiglottis. The epiglottis is this little curled lip, or a curled tongue, I guess, and it flips down over the glottis. Epi, above, or around, epiglottis. Okay, so the esophagus, the glottis, and the epiglottis, all part of the pharynx area. And here's the larynx and trachea. Take your time with this